You ever get that feeling like you're speaking a completely different language than the students of today? Yeah, you're not alone. We're about to dive into this massive shift, a real revolution in how people think and learn, all thanks to technology. And trust me, what we find might just flip your whole idea of the classroom on its head. And this quote from writer Mark Prensky, man, it just nails it. This isn't your classic generation gap he's talking about. No, this is something much deeper. A huge disconnect between a school system designed for one world and the students who live in a totally different one. Prensky calls this change a singularity. Now, what does that mean? Well, don't think of it as a slow, steady change. Think of it more like a giant, sudden crack, an event so big that there's just no going back. Digital tech didn't just tweak things, it completely redrew the map for how we think and learn. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll start by really unpacking this whole singularity idea. Then we'll get into the main event, digital natives versus digital immigrants. We'll even ask, do they actually think differently? From there, we'll check out how tech has shown up in classrooms, peek into the future of learning, and wrap up with a really tough choice that educators are facing right now. All right, so how big of a deal is this singularity really? Well, think about this. The generations growing up right now are the very first in all of human history to be soaked in digital tech from the moment they're born. And when you look at the actual numbers, wow, the amount of time they spend with this stuff is just staggering. Just look at this. By graduation, an average college student might spend, 5,000 hours reading books? Okay, that sounds like a lot, but then compare it to 10,000 hours playing video games and a mind-blowing 20,000 hours watching TV. You see? This isn't just about what they do for fun. It's like they're on a completely different mental diet. Okay, so this huge shift in how kids spend their time brings us to Prensky's big idea, his core metaphor. And, while people have debated it over the years, it's still an amazing way to picture the massive divide he saw opening up. First, we've got the digital natives. These are the kids today. They grew up with this stuff everywhere. For them, using a smartphone or hopping on the internet isn't something they learned, it's just part of them. It's like their first language, their native tongue. They don't even have to think about it. Then you have the other side of the coin, the digital immigrants. This is pretty much anyone who wasn't born into the digital world, but had to learn it all later. And here's the clever part. Just like learning a foreign language, they almost always keep their accent. Those little habits that give away their pre-digital past. So what does this accent look like in real life? Oh, you've totally seen it. It's printing out an email just to be able to read it, or printing a Word doc so you can edit it with a red pen. It's yelling, "Hey, come look at this," instead of just sending the link. And my personal favorite, making a phone call to ask, "Hey, did you get that email I sent?" Total giveaways of an analog upbringing. And look, this goes way deeper than just quirky habits. It hits the very core of how people prefer to learn. Digital natives, they want graphics first, text later. They're masters of multitasking, jumping around with hyperlinks. They want learning to feel like a game. But digital immigrants, they were taught to read the text first, do one thing at a time, follow a logical, step-by-step path. Work is supposed to be serious. You can see why this creates a major clash in the classroom, right? But is it all just a matter of preference? Or is something else going on under the hood? Well, Prensky's big claim is that all these digital experiences are literally changing the physical structure of the brain. So let's dive into the science and see what's really happening. The big idea here is something called neuroplasticity. For a long time, we thought our brains were basically set in stone after we grew up. Turns out that's totally wrong. Our brains are incredibly flexible or plastic. They're constantly building new connections based on what we do. So every experience, every skill we practice, it physically reshapes our brains. And the proof is pretty much everywhere. Scientists see it in rats, give them a fun, stimulating playground, and their brains get more complex. They see it in blind people, where the part of the brain meant for vision gets rewired to read Braille. It all points to the same thing. Our brains are shaped by what we do. So it's not a huge leap to say that thousands of hours of screen time have done the exact same thing to the brains of digital natives. Okay, so this isn't just some abstract theory, and using tech in school is nothing new. To really see how teaching has changed hand in hand with technology, let's check out a perfect example, something called computer-assisted language learning, or CALL for short. The story of CALL basically breaks down into 3 big stages, and each stage tells you a lot about how people thought about technology and learning at the time. We've got structural, then communicative, And finally, integrative. Let's go back to the 70s. The first phase was called structural CF. The big idea then was behaviorism. Learning through repetition, drill and kill. Computers were these huge mainframes, and their job was basically to be a tireless tutor that never got bored, just drilling students over and over and over on grammar. Then, in the 80s, things started to change with communicative call. Suddenly, we have personal computers. The goal wasn't just to be perfectly accurate anymore. It was about being fluent. It was about actually using the language to communicate something meaningful. The computer stopped being a drill sergeant and started becoming more of a practice partner. And that brings us to today, with integrative call. With the internet and all kinds of multimedia, we can finally mix everything together. Reading, writing, listening, speaking, all in one place. Learning a language now happens in a much more real, social, and connected way, kind of like how we actually use language in our daily lives. This chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? You see the tech go from mainframes to the internet. You see the goal change from just getting it right to actually having something to say. The computer's job went from a boring drill machine to a portal for actual conversation. It's a fantastic snapshot of how teaching methods grow up, right alongside the tools we have. So, where are we headed from here? If that's the path we've been on, what's the next stop? Well, building on everything we've seen, the future of learning looks like it's going to be way more immersive and way more dynamic. This whole journey really follows the evolution of the web itself, right? First, there was Web 1.0, which was basically a read-only internet, like a big digital encyclopedia. Then came Web 2.0, the read-write web, where we all started creating content with social media and blogs. And now we're moving into Web 3.0, the smart web, where things like AI are going to make everything way more personal and interactive. And this is a great way to see that difference. On the left, you've got a classic website. It's a one-way street. Information flows out to you. But on the right, you have something like a wiki. It's a two-way, even a 10-way street. Everyone is creating and consuming. This is the kind of interactive world that digital natives just take for granted. So what's the next big step? It's all about immersive learning. We're talking about virtual reality, VR, where you can literally walk through ancient Rome, and augmented reality, AR, which overlays digital info onto the real world around you. Learning isn't just something you look at on a screen anymore. It's becoming something you're inside of. And that brings us all the way back to where we started, back to that central problem. You've got these digital native students, maybe literally wired for this fast-paced, immersive world. And you have digital immigrant teachers trying their best to teach in what feels like a second language. So that leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? If the students have already changed, if their brains are already different, if they're already fluent in this new language, then who's the one that needs to adapt? Prinsky doesn't pull any punches with his answer. He basically says trying to force today's students to learn in yesterday's language is a fight you're going to lose. His challenge to educators is simple. Stop complaining, learn the language, and, as the kids would say, just do it. A really powerful and maybe controversial thought to end on for anyone in education today.